In today's episode of Driftwood Conversations, I sit down with Lauren Lovett, a somatic experience practitioner, voice coach, and actor. Lauren's journey is one of transformation, resilience, and creativity. From her early acting days at Juilliard to her work empowering others to connect deeply with their bodies and voices, Lauren brings a wealth of experience and insight. I currently have the privilege of working with Lauren, and what I've learned has profoundly changed how I approach my voice and presence. Today, we'll explore her fascinating career, unique approach to somatic dialogue, and how she helps others navigate life's challenges through body-centered awareness. Hello, everybody. This is Hillary Sloan. I am here with Lauren Lovett, and we're going to have a conversation.
Yes, we are.
So, Lauren, I met you recently, and you've been working with me as a voice coach and a little bit more, but we'll get to what that is.
Yeah.
First, why don't you tell me what you do? What's your work? Where do you live? How did this?
All the things.
Yeah.
Well, I am a somatic experiencing practitioner. I live my life through the lens of being an artist because I started acting when I was 8. So I do a lot of somatic-based work with people, and I'm writing a book about it, about somatic dialogue, because we're so mind-centered, and I feel like we're missing more than half of the bargain here, more than half of the data, half of the joy, half of being a sentient being.
What is somatic?
Somatic, soma, S-O-M-A, is Greek for the body. Yeah. So when you say somatic, you could mean jumping up and down. You could mean massage. Somatic body work, somatic work is a huge umbrella. But the way that I use it, somatic experiencing is releasing trauma through the body. So there are a lot of books like Body Keeps the Score, Body Says No, all of these things that have come out in the last 10 years that are about identifying trauma through the body and being able to process and release that and not be in denial about it, And actually, some of these guys that, Bessel van der Kolk and Gabor Mate, they say, well, diseases, dis-ease in the body can be traced to trauma and suppressed emotion. So they are very far in the continuum of like everything comes back to trauma and suppression, denial, to any tension, all that stuff. And then there are, of course, those on the other end of the spectrum, which we've been kind of in this age of just like mind, just featuring on the mind. And even mindfulness has mind in the title. So mindfulness, I think, is so interesting because that has to do with meditation and everything, which is hardly new. But then you're mindful of your breath, which happens in the body. And you're mindful of your thoughts in that you are not your thoughts. And you can say, oh, that's just a thought. But then what else are you mindful of? Your body, your movement, your eating, your walking. Even the way that your temperature rises and you get activated. So I'm really, really interested in that, so much so that I never thought I would write a book, and now I guess I am.
What do you do for clients? With me, you're helping me learn more about my voice and application of my voice.
Yes.
That's correct.
Well, for you, we started with you just coming back home to your body. And I think you may have even said that, right? Oh, I feel like I'm home again. Being embodied, coming back to the body, landing back in the body. We needed to do that. And that's how I start with a lot of people because, again, mind-centered. So anxiety and all this stuff runs around in the mind. Like I like to call the mind the little sibling. And the big sibling, the wiser one, is the body. We don't tend to frame things that way, but that's the way I like to, because the mind is wonderful and precocious, but can run wild, and lead us into tension and despair. So first we land in the body. Then you and I talked about alignment. We talked about opening up the breath channel. We did some floor work. So all of that affects the voice and can release the voice. And we did do some at long last, right? The end of the session. But a lot of voice people, because I know a lot of voice people, they will start right away with humming, ha-hum, and all that stuff, which is wonderful. But the reason why I got into somatic experiencing and somatic release and now somatic dialogue is because we need to land in the body first and meet the body where it is and give her some attention. Her, him, they, some attention.
What do you do for other clients?
Other clients, yeah. So I was an actor. I went to the Juilliard School, but I was an actor long before that. And then I got out and I was an actor, but then I started coaching people kind of right away. Even at school, people would be like, hey, can you help me with this monologue? You know what I mean? Because I love Shakespeare and I love Chekhov and Oscar Wilde and all those things. I love language. I was acting, but I also started teaching, especially when I moved to LA about 20 years ago. I was teaching at AMDA. I taught at Stella Adler's Art of Acting. I taught at the Studio School, which I don't think is still open. I've taught at different studios.
Most of this was New York.
Well, no, this is LA, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I had private clients in New York, but I was still very much acting in New York and doing like part-time jobs. But once I moved here, I started doing more voiceover work and I started to teach at these schools and studios. I was still acting, but then by the time I was about 40, I was like, okay, either I have to undereat and get a boob job and possibly other jobs to my face to continue to participate in this folly that is Hollywood. And again, this is like 2010, 2011. Or I can push back from trying to get a seat at this table that I don't really favor. I don't love it. Like, I love acting. I think if you talk to any actor, we love the actual acting. It's all that crap you got to do around the acting. Promoting yourself, doing all that sort of hobnobby stuff, the chit-chat, getting your headshots every 5 minutes, running around town in a lawyer's suit, all that stuff. And I was like, I am more than that. I just felt like I wasn't serving my soul well by keeping myself small and even considering like being smaller, for the camera. So I kind of pushed back from acting. I still did a little understudy work, like at the Geffen or something, but I let go all my reps and stopped auditioning and just went full on into teaching. And then I founded my own nonprofit, which had nothing to do with acting. It was about literacy and self-expression. So it was called Reading Opens Minds. It lasted for 7 years, and I ran it pretty much volunteer. And we did book clubs in the jails, in underserved schools, in rehab programs, at Venice Family Clinic, with Homeboy Industries. I don't know if you know Homeboy.
Yes, I do. In fact, Bob just did a little film about Homeboy
Really?
of some of their women. So Bob is my partner, Bob Stevens.
Yes.
And you'll have to meet him before you leave.
Yes, I'd love to. Yeah, I spent maybe 5 years every other week doing a book club at Homeboy. They really loved the book Divergent when it came out because it's all about your tribe, your faction, like where do you really belong, with whom. And people in the same family in that book were in different groups, different tribes. So they really identified with that. It was really exciting doing that. And at the same time, I started grad school at Pacifica Graduate Institute for marriage and family counseling. But I had just founded the nonprofit, and then some of the schools found out about it, like the underserved schools, like down by LAX and then up in San Fernando, and they wanted the program. So I ended up leaving grad school because the programs were in demand. We had 16 different book clubs going on at one time at the height of Reading Opens Minds. And we did a podcast too, The Real Word. And we did it with one group of high school kids. And we did it for about their school year. And I recorded what they thought of different characters in different books and like interviewing them during book club. It was so fun. Yeah, so that's what I did. And then I had to close that down. And then I really relaunched my coaching business. So to answer your question in a really long-winded way, I work with actors. I work with people who work in theater, film, and TV. So one of my repeat clients is a British actress, And she'll be like, okay, well, I've got this coming up and I got to sound more American and let's build this character together and let's do this and let's do that. So I've coached her on things that you have seen her in. I won't mention who it is, but on TV and film. She did a Kenneth Branagh film and coached her on that. And we do different dialects, different accents, but we also think about the character body, of course, because again, it's body centered. Even your language, your voice, the way you speak comes from your body and the union with your mind, partnership, the friendship. So I coach actors for auditions and for film, TV, and theater. And I coach artists in general, kind of more about, yes, voice, but also like the artist life, because it can be hard, as you know, it can be crushing. So I coach on that. So that's more therapeutic. But I keep studying all of these, mostly somatic based or trauma based modalities or theories, or like I took a year at the Jungian Center. It was online during COVID, but we had a year and we met every Saturday to discuss like dreams or, all these Jungian precepts. So I'm always educating. It's never done. It's never done, your education, which is the great joy of life, or one of. So yes, I help people with the artist lifestyle. I also do intimacy and consent-based practices, which is a new field for film and TV and theater, where if you have a scene where you're exposed, where you're nude or partially nude, or you have a scene where it's simulated sex or any other kind of physical intimacy, they will call me in to say, okay, can you help us do this? Either choreograph or just like make sure that everybody's good with what's in the script. So that's a fairly new career that's happening. And so I trained with 3 different organizations to do that.
That's amazing. I want to know more about that.
Yeah.
Did that come out of the Me Too?
Yes. I mean, here's the thing. From what I understand, having trained, and now I'm a part of a lot of groups online, and I've trained a lot. I keep, again, continue to train with people, with these trainers, these companies. The intimacy was being done, maybe even 20 years ago by usually choreographers or fight and violence choreographers. Usually women, not always. But it's like, oh, they were choreographing the fight or the quote unquote rape scene or something. And then the director would be like, yeah, can you also do the kissing? And can you also do that? So they already were getting experience and sort of figuring out what this was. And then it coalesced into an actual position right around 2020. And that's when these bodies started coalescing into companies and training people. So that's when I started to train about 5 years ago.
Now, 2020 was also COVID.
Yes.
So nobody was getting close. How did that work?
Right. Well, it was more the age of training because, everything was put on hold. And it's funny because they had planned to do all of this stuff just like all of us. And then everything was shut down. But they continued to do training by Zoom and things like that for when things reopened. Because the work had already been done. I mean, Viola Davis, who was 1 year ahead of me at Juilliard, she did that breakout show. I can't remember the name of it right now. That show and she made big headlines and big changes because here's this woman who's in her late 40s, early 50s being highly sexual. She even took off she's an African-American woman. She took off her wig, which is sort of unheard of. So there was already an intimacy person, that was pre-COVID, credited on that show that helped with all of that physical intimacy, which is why it's so good. Yeah, How to Get Away with Murder, I think that's what it's called, which is funny. I watched the whole thing, but it is maybe 6, 7, 8 years old now. So it's been going on for a while, but it really coalesced in 2020. So I really love it. In theater, I've done some theater gigs, and sometimes it's just interviewing the actors privately, each individually, to see, okay, do you see that what the scene is, you're exposed, how are you with that? Do you want to wear like coverings on your nipples or, something like that? Do you only want your back to show? Now, a lot of actors have riders, as you should, meaning an addendum to the contract. But there's also gray areas. And what used to happen not that long ago was you'd have an actress, usually, who has a rider who says no full frontal nudity or something like that, only from the side. And then day of the shoot, the director can be intimidating. and say, well, I know the writer, but it would make the scene so much better if you would just be fully nude. So there was a lot of coercion going on, and that's the least of it, to be honest. I don't want to get in the weeds with what used to happen, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good. So it's not that I'm there to police anything, but because I also study somatic experiencing and trauma and the nervous system, and I acutely notice the body, I can even tell over Zoom if I'm talking to an actress about a scene and she starts blinking a lot, but saying, "Oh, and no, it's fine. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's fine." And if her breath shortens a little bit or her pupils dilate, there's a little bit of activation, then I can say, well, and maybe call her attention to something specific to say, "And how about this? How does this feel?" And a lot of times it only takes a little bit more attention where they go, my agent said I should do that, but I'm not really comfortable. You know what I mean? So I'm there to help resource so that everybody's happy. So the director also gets what they want. I'm not there to say no intimacy. I'm there to say, how can we do this so everyone feels free and good?
So, what I'm thinking of as I'm listening to you is what an amazing career
Oh, yeah, I guess so.
and how it seemed to develop organically.
Yeah. I realized that when I was a kid acting, and then I went to school and we did a lot of Alexander technique, which is what you and I are doing together. That's about alignment. That's the body, the nervous system and the body. But also, I realized in retrospect what made me continue to act and act in a way that felt unique is that I always allowed my body to lead. So, like, for example, when I played Laura in Glass Menagerie, which I'm not a shoe-in for, I'm actually pretty hardy. My body is I'm not, like, wispy. And I got it, I think, because it was, like, the kind of Joan Cusack version in a weird way. But what I enjoy is finding the life of the character by themselves. So Laura, if you know that play by Tennessee Williams, is a recluse. She doesn't have a social life. So she has her glass animals. So I love going into, like, where they kept the little props and playing with them myself, and then I would, like, rub, like, one of the glass animals on my cheek and rub it in my hair and things like that, that weird stuff we do that you wouldn't do in company, right? But by yourself you would, especially if you were intimate with a glass animal or your glass collection. You might touch it or kiss it or breathe on it or feel it in different parts of the body and talk to them. So I always, at a certain point in whatever character I was playing, put my mind in the back seat and allowed kind of my body to feel through what was going on in private with that character and then bring a piece of it to rehearsal or to the performance.
What do you think your childhood was about that enabled you to move? Well, first of all, maybe where did you grow up?
I grew up in Delaware. But people are like, I don't know anyone from Delaware. I know you don't. They're all still there.
And was your family into theater or the arts?
No, I mean, not my immediate family. My dad played the harmonica. He was a doctor, but he was an artist in that he carved like ducks and decoys and things. He had his workshop in the garage. So yes, but not like performance based. My brother did sing for a while. And of course he plays the guitar. The truth is my brother can play any instrument. And he would say, not well, but you just give him a little time and he's on the keyboard and then he's playing the bass and then he's playing the guitar. He plays the dulcimer. I mean, so yes, he was, but he's younger than me. So it was kind of like I came and then he came and we were kind of both somewhat musical. And then because I used to play the piano as well, but not our parents per se, except my dad and his little workshop. However, my mom's mom was a singer and my father has a nephew that I'm back in touch with who is also like carved and made these beautiful little animals and stuff. So I guess it was peppered through, but it's not like they were theater people. And what I think it's just one of those things, and Hillary, maybe you felt this way too, where you're a kid and I did karate when I was young and I tried dancing. I'm a terrible dancer, so that did not work out. But then I saw a play and I was like, oh, I can do that. I can do that. And then I auditioned for some Irish maid in some play that was supposed to be 20, and I think I was 10. And they were like, little girl, you can't play that part. But they did give me a part. There was only one line, though. And it was, that was my big line at 10. Yeah, but it's the kind of thing where lightning strikes and you go, oh, yeah, that's my language. I get it. I get it. And I always wanted to transform into that person. It wasn't enough just to put on a fakey voice or just know your lines. It was like, but who are they? How does their blood pump and their heart beat? What do they want in their lives, you know?
It's interesting as you're talking. So I was very, very shy and I read a lot, but I would develop characters.
Yeah.
So writing and creating wasn't about going out at theater or any of that. I couldn't remember lines. But when I became a costumer for years,
Yes. Yes.
I got, as you're describing what you feel like behind the character or with that character,
Yeah.
that's how I felt about the costumes.
Yes. Oh, that makes so much sense. That's where all the great designers, that's where they live, is they imagine. It's almost like they're kind of covert actors, right? Because you imagine, well, what would this Victorian lady be wearing? Like, what's her favorite color? Like, what is she? Yes.
And even what are her fears and her hopes? Because that's going to determine how you dress,
100%.
how you meet the public.
Yeah. This is the argument for our bodies, our humanness, and the arts to be the shelter from AI. Because AI doesn't think about the senses and living in the body. And like what you just said, sure, could AI design a costume? Probably, if you fed it all the context. So, okay, we're in 1800s and she's this and this is her socioeconomic blah, blah, blah. They could probably design costumes or will be able to very soon. But what you just said about like, what are her fears? What does she want? And what is she protecting herself from? How tight is this corset? Because there are corsets, but how long are they? How tight are they? Is there boning? What's the boning like? Did she choose it or did somebody enforce that on her? Do you know what I mean? Like the deeper things. This is what will always, I hope, separate us from AI.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation.
It is, but I always want to, because that's kind of where the zeitgeist is right now. Like, oh my gosh, the arts, you know, they're with the recent strike, right? SAG-AFTRA had a strike, and so did the writers. And the big concern with SAG-AFTRA, among other things, was that the studios wanted to make images, likenesses of famous people, people that sell, you know, butts and seats, sell tickets, past their death, and use those images past the person's expiration of their body. And the actors were like, no. And also, you can't just manipulate images. And so we're sort of heading in this direction of like, are we replaceable? And I'm here to say, no, we're not, because of what you just said, because of what we're sharing here and now. Yes, we're using technology, but we're still in our bodies.
There's another issue for me,
Yeah.
and it's a big one about our time, is ethics.
Yes. Yes.
You know, is it ethical to take somebody who is renowned and known and impose your sense of rightness or creativity even on that person?
Or profit.
Or for profit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't think that's fair.
No, it's not fair. And we're in an interesting age for ethics right now because there is a lot of information, right? Yuval Harari, who wrote Homo Deus and Sapiens, and he has a new book out, Nexus, about AI. He's a historian. And he's like, there is a lot of information, but truth is something else. He's Israeli. So yeah, his voice just rings in my head. I just listened to a talk by him, and and I've read those books. So it's interesting where if we can utilize these things with ethical commitment, but then what is ethics now? Is it about fairness? Is it about a kind of Judeo-Christian morality? Is your moral compass installed in your equipment, or do you learn it? And what about, we've got some people coming into office in January who seem to have, for lack of any real knowledge of, I've never met Donald Trump, do you know, like be on a different ethical planet or scale than a lot of other people that I do know. So what does that mean?
Or maybe we put it, I've been thinking about this a lot.
I'm sure.
It's ethics, truth, presentation, how you enter the world. It's
Yeah.
all being manipulated
Yeah.
for self-serving purposes. And I can't say that one side is worse than the other. There's always some fine lines,
Yes.
but there's got to be a self-truth,
An integrity.
an integrity
An integrity that doesn't have to do with, again, morality,
at all.
our own integrity. Now, funny you should mention, and I kind of put that word in your mouth, but I think that's where you were going.
It works.
Integrity, really, how do you, okay, let me throw this back. How do you know when you're in your integrity? What does that feel like? When you know you're following your own integrity or your own sense of truth.
That's very, very interesting.
Mhm.
I'll go right back to what we started this whole conversation. It's got to be in my body
Yes.
because my body will close up. I'll
Yes.
get
Yes.
butterflies. I'll be
Feel it
uncomfortable.
twisting. Yes. Yeah. Your shoulder will go up. You'll get, yeah, something will happen in the gut. You said my gut the other day. Yeah. That is, again, the basis of my coaching.
And it can change. So what I think is ethical this moment may not be ethical 20 minutes from now, but being clear as I can
Yeah.
to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is what gets very difficult, I think,
Yeah.
is that there are some people right now,
Yeah.
but it's very obvious right now, that are never going to hear you.
Yeah.
They're never going to hear what you're saying to them. And so then what? Where do we take that?
Well, I mean, it's so funny. Mel Robbins, do you know who that is? Mel Robbins, she used to be a lawyer and now she has a podcast and she's a big business coach and stuff. She's got a book out and her big thing is let them. She loves saying that. Then that's the name of her new book, I think. Let them. So, okay, let's break that out. Let them, meaning, yes, there have always been folks that have their ears closed and just proceed with their own desires that turn out to be about ego, about I want, I need, let's acquire another planet or let's build this sort of thing or whatever. And they become ego inflated, egomaniacal, all of that kind of stuff. So there will always be people, and there always has been people, they have been there who don't listen, who are carried away by ego, acquisition, material goods, achievement, how much, oh, this CEO is making $10 million, I need to make 12, do you know? So there will always be those folks. And they're not only folks that have wealth, because I think we do assign that. We're like, oh, wealth is toxic, money is toxic. I don't believe that, but they're in the public eye. You know what I mean? And they run stuff. So it's easy to identify them. And so there will always be people that have their ears closed, that are not interested in your truth, my truth, the dialogue that we're having. So we need to keep checking in with ourselves and build our own community, because just like there will always be people that are not listening, there will always be people that want to know, that want to hear you, that need guidance, that need help just finding their own voice. And it's up to you and me and people that are, now we don't have it all figured out by any means, but for me, the reason why I am a coach and even why I was an actor is to show the way, to help show the way. I'm still on the way, but I can see it more clearly now that I'm in my 50s. The way, and I can show you and say, Hillary, it's like those meditations we do every Monday. I do a reading right now from Martha Beck's Way of Integrity, speaking of integrity, which comes back to the body and how we can feel coherent within ourselves, where the parts come together, where we release tension, worry, things like that. So if we're all coming together and there's more and more people that want that, then we will build a circle. We will build a stronger community that cares about the things that we care about. I will never not care about women's rights and women's health. I will never not care about that. throw me into jail, do whatever. I will never not care. I will never not care about racism. I will never not care about the environment. I will never not care about the use of guns in this country. And that's just, I know I can feel right now that like my belly is on fire in a good way when I talk about those things. So I want to attract the people that feel the same way or might feel that same way, who care about each other. And then you let the people that want to build the metaverse and just sit in a chair and have augmented or virtual reality, that's also fine. Let them do that. Because, we could benefit from more technology as tools, but not as a takeover and not as oppressive.
So you were talking about your book.
Oh, yeah. Have you written a book yet?
Yes, actually.
Yes. Okay, tell me about yours, your process.
Oh, God, it can be laborious.
Of course, but what's the best thing and the worst thing in your experience about having written a book or when you were writing?
So I've written a couple. One became a play, and they are not very good. They will never see the light of day.
Okay, we'll see.
But they were amazing experiences. One took 10 years, but did get finished. In the beginning, sitting down and writing, the voices in my head that screamed at me, "You can't do this. This is awful." And here's a very funny story, but
Yeah.
I was alone. I was styling. It was during my lifetime as a stylist. And I was alone. I lived by myself. And all of a sudden, the word surrender came up for me. And I said out loud to the universe, I don't know what that means, but I will surrender. Within a day or two, I had no more work.
Whoa.
And it went on for about a year.
Whoa.
And just as things got almost impossible, enough money came through to keep me going. So in that time, it was like, I don't know what to do. I've knocked on doors.
Yeah.
I've taken my portfolio in those days out. And I thought, well, I'll write. And I sat down to write, and it was terrible. It was just terrible. I sat back in my chair and I said to the universe, who I talked to a lot,
Good. Yeah.
I said, you got to tell me if I should stop doing this or if I'm just fooling myself.
Yeah.
And then I decided to step away and go take out the garbage. I walked down.
Always a good idea.
I walked into the lobby, and my next door neighbor, who I didn't know, this very sophisticated Englishman, comes out of his apartment, looks at me and said, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it.
No way. That's synergy.
And it was so immediate.
Yeah.
We became very close friends and influenced each other in the arts in many different ways. He went on to write quite a bit.
That's synergy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's synchronicity.
And so what I got out of it is the process of using words, using your creativity, and also stepping into something that's that difficult.
Yes.
Is very powerful.
There's no way to get around it. Like, you have to write your book. You can't, sure, you can have a ghostwriter, I guess, but if you're going to write it, you can't get around that. You actually
it's a different thing. Ghostwriting. And,
yes, which is fine, but
then you're a celebrity. You're not the writer.
Right.
Yeah,
you can't get around it. You gotta sit down and do it at some point.
I read something this morning on Substack about, how hard it is. This was a woman who was a food writer, and writers, journalists, they don't make a lot of money. Most artists don't make a lot of money.
No, it's true.
And yet the world doesn't understand the effort that goes into it. And what she said is, please support other artists.
Yeah.
Pay for a magazine subscription.
Yeah.
Join clubs. Do anything.
Patreon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I pay for This American Life because I've listened to that show forever. And I just thought this year, I was like, you have enjoyed this show for like half your life. Pay for it. Just pay for and because they give you little extras and stuff, but that's not why I did it. I just thought, I agree. with that person. We do need to reciprocate the energy for journalists, for artists. Absolutely.
And what I think, and I've gotten this a bit from you too, is when you take an action like that to support somebody, what you're doing is supporting yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it feels good to your body. It's much more organic. It's in integrity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's on
Their beliefs, or even just, beliefs is still kind of held in the mind. But when you give something that you want to give, there's an opening there in the body. Your shoulders fall, your chest opens, your eyes widen. There's space. There's space where there wasn't space a minute before. I do love that.
the universe in all of this. The universe will support you. Maybe not the way you think it should.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
I have this woman that has an abundance course online, and she's a comedian, and she is hilarious. And she likens it to, let's say you and I are at a cosmic diner. The universe is embodied in the wait person, in the server, and they come and take our order. And whatever you order actually is what you focus on in your life. That's what you're ordering. The universe / wait person doesn't have any dog in the race as far as that goes. I mean, sometimes maybe they'll upsell you, but otherwise it's like, what are you having? And then we order what we're having by virtue of our focus, where our energy goes. So I think you're right. Like, even with breath, we talked about this the other day. You don't need to take a big breath, right? When I say take it, there feels like some action that has to happen. But what we really need to do is allow the breath to fall into us, to come in, because we're in an atmosphere that is giving. There is a atmospheric pressure that doesn't, I mean, if you climb all the way up to very high mountains, you can really feel the elevation, the change in pressure. But the way we live in this atmosphere, it feeds us if we can get out of its way and we can be more open. We can allow. That's the Alexander technique again. Allowing. So you allow the breath to come in without, you know what I mean? Because when we take a deep breath, there's tension in that. We're creating tension where we think we're releasing.
I think that's really important right now because so many people are anxious about what's happening politically.
Yeah.
And the truth is, we don't know. We don't know anything.
We don't know what's going to happen. You really don't.
So if we follow our own instincts, our own truth,
Mm-hmm.
and allow things to come to you,
Yeah.
it's easier. It's
Yeah.
more supportive.
It's more supportive. And it doesn't mean you don't have agency. And it doesn't mean you aren't active in your life. But I think you and I can both, I'll confess, especially in my younger years, but not that long ago, I was definitely like a fiery, like, okay, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to make this happen. And I did. But it was a lot of suffering for me, a lot of tension, because I felt like, oh, I'm just not getting this energy back. That's because I was forcing it. And then why doesn't anybody else want to join me? It's like, well, because you're on fire. You're too hot. That's why. But sometimes when we step back, where we've been so front-footed, when we step back, we allow others to come forward. And I learned that very late, like maybe a year or two ago. Like, oh, okay, make some room. Give way. I still have dreams and desires and ambitions, but I'm just handling them a different way.
I think every day I feel like I'm learning.
Yeah.
Like I'm writing again. For a while, my focus
Good.
was other things, was photography. And I pushed and I pushed and I tried to learn. And there's technical things that are not me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They never will be me.
Yeah.
I'm a much more spontaneous person.
Yeah.
And when I photograph, I like natural light. I like running after people or combines or, going through weird places and those
Things.
catching those. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And so in writing again, no matter what I'm doing, there's this learning, but I have to let everything out,
Yeah.
stop, walk away,
Yes.
come back and meet it again where it is.
Yes. And you've changed in the time you've walked around the block. I mean, when I'm coaching somebody, especially somebody, because a lot of people that I coach are highly intelligent and thereby highly verbal. So they're really into the narrative. So I've got to slow them down. And what I like to say is, ooh, can we pull over and park here for a minute? If they've said something that I want to kind of unpack or, break out, to say, okay, you said this. Let's just say that word again. Can we notice what happens in the body when you say, that was so frustrating? Whatever it is. And then all these other things come to the surface that usually in our tempo of our lives, we just blow right by and then wonder why we feel sick all the time or why we're anxious or why we have so much tension or why we have so much pain. It's because we're just blowing by all of this rich data from the body, all of what it's trying to tell us moment to moment. And so my mission now is, the book will hopefully be longer than one sentence, which is slow down. Just slow down. Listen. Listen to your own body, its chemistry. Yes, the emotions are there too, but it's not only about emotion. It's about energy, sensation. It's about catching even behavior like blinking, or, I'll have clients that do funny little things like, I won't do it now, but like bang their palm or itch their palm against the side of a table unconsciously. And then I'll say, oh, do you see what your hand is doing there? And they'll go, I guess I always do that. I don't know, And it's so interesting because the body is trying to tell us things all the time because we're not giving it its due.
Let's take a moment and describe what the Alexander technique is and what you do with a client when you meet them.
Yeah. So just to out myself, I'm not certified in Alexander technique. It is a very long process to certify. I know it and I've studied it and I've taken lessons after school. But at Juilliard, we had the Alexander technique for 4 years every week, a few times a week. So, and really, I only kind of got the aha in my 4th year. So that's how long sometimes it can really take because, again, I was a fiery doer. I'm going to make this happen, And that is not it. That is not the Alexander technique. It was brought on by this guy, F.M. Alexander, who was a traveling actor and orator, and he kept losing his voice. And then the doctors would put him on bed rest, and then as soon as he came off bed rest, he would lose his voice again. So he looked at himself in 3 different mirrors he set up to see, like, what is happening to me? And that's kind of great. Like when I coach people, I am their mirror. Do you know? Just like a therapist, it can be your mirror. So he saw that he was jutting his jaw forward, which was we kind of did this the other day, which was pressing his throat forward too, shortening the back of his neck and imploding the sternum. So right there, you're pushing your larynx where your vocal folds are, because Alexander technique started with him losing his voice. So it's very connected to the voice. So all of these things happen with the body when the neck crunches down and we're pushed forward and we kind of implode in the chest and in the belly. It's a chain reaction. So when we do the Alexander technique, which is about alignment, it's really about releasing, allowing. It's about using your body more efficiently. If right now I were going to go and grab that bottle over there and I wasn't conscious of my movement at all, I might just lumber over there and grab this thing and whatever, and I'm throwing my weight around and I, could be awkward. I make 7,000 moves when I need 7. If I can be conscious about my alignment and start from a place of sort of aligned neutrality, like a refresh, then I can see that object there and then I can use my body in the most efficient, graceful, aligned way to keep my breath going and to utilize just what I need to get that bottle over there. So you can use it in life, but a lot of artists use it, especially actors and musicians. You could have used it when you styled because you're carrying all this heavy stuff around and you're going from location to location or shoot to shoot. And you kind of contort yourself, even when you're fitting somebody, you're contorting to where the hem is and And you can do that in an aligned way and not feel so contorted.
So when I first heard about it, I was in New York and it was in the 70s and they were dancers.
Yes. Yeah.
I lived with a house full of dancers
Yeah.
and they had become aware of it along with Pilates.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Now, Pilates is interesting. I'm sure you know all about it, having lived with dancers. That is kind of based on the ballet body and the ballet form, and it's to really strengthen your deepest core muscles that we can't touch, to give your back some strength, your whole body, because you're doing the core, the lower back, the inside the core, the hip flexors. But I have found that when I took Pilates recently from a very brilliant teacher, in some ways, especially with the chest, there was a little bit of a strain because there is a pulling up in some ways of it, as I understand it. Whereas Alexander, you don't do that. You don't necessarily pull up. You think the direction of up without physically suspending the rib cage. Do you know what I mean?
I don't accept it. You're gonna have to try it with me. Yeah.
Yes, I will show. It's very subtle, but that's what I found to be different. Not bad by any means, just different.
But that's fascinating
Yeah.
to think about. I understand creatively, I understand that idea of kind of wrapping your mind around something so you embody it before you even take it to a physical place.
Yes, I mean for me, and maybe this is just my interpretation, but Alexander is about thinking, but it's not about a narrative. It's about my neck is free. My head moves forward and up off the end of my spine. And that's repeated to yourself so that your body and your mind can be in partnership, in friendship, to do it simultaneously, allow it to happen, rather than like, well, I need to be pulled up and let me get this, you know what I mean? It's not a bunch of stuff. It's very simple. They call it direction. My torso fans into width. You sort of let that kind of dribble through the body, expanding through the body. So there are cues. They do use language, and it is about thinking, but not in a narrative way. I mean, it is narrating, but I guess when I say narrative, I mean like storytelling. Can we create stories? And what I do with any client I have is, okay, that's the story. That's the little sibling, the mind, running around telling stories. Can we come back to the body? Can we come back to the breath? Can we land? Can you feel your butt on the chair? Can you notice sensation in your hands? So that if we're actors and we do want to get inside of a story, we're not also bringing our own full story.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do.
you see some actors and they're kind of always the same because they haven't found this release to get more into the character. Now you utilize yourself, the library of memories, all of your physicalities, but you can more easily transform, even if it's a very subtle transformation, if you can release into your body and then wonder about, experiment with what their body might be like. It's like a Venn diagram. Here's me over here. Here's them over there. And then where do we meet in the middle? And hopefully by the end of the process, that middle is kind of bigger than both parts. That's the third thing. It's like they say, if you're a musician and you hear a song, you hear it, you let it wash over you. You're like, oh, wow, I really love that song. I just love what it does to me. Then the second step is you got to learn the song technically. You got to sit at the piano or have the guitar and you've got to pick it out. You got to learn the song, whether you have the music or not. You've got to do the technical bit to learn the song. But then the third thing happens, which is the synergy, which is neither you picking it out nor you just passively hearing it. It's you in a partnership with your body, mind, and that piece.
That's great.
Yeah, it's the third thing.
So as we're kind of wrapping up, I have two big questions for you. One, I'm going back to where you started as a child and the career you thought you'd have and where you are now, and that beautiful synergy that seemed to happen. And I'm sure not without challenges and moments. And what would you tell a young person starting out if they have some interest but don't know where they're going?
This is, 10 years ago, I've been asked this question before, and 10 years ago and 20 years ago, I had different answers. We are in a different world now because of technology, number one. And things are happening at such a rate that there is an anxiety epidemic right now. There is. So the first thing I would say is give yourself attention, slow yourself down. I mean, I'm a big fan of Vipassana meditation because it's 10 days of silence. We need to find a way for folks to hear their own voices so you can find your own integrity. I think that's the hardest part now, because in the 70s and even in the 80s and even in the 90s and early aughts before the iPhone and Facebook and blah, 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 if you were looking, it was a little easier to find coherence within yourself, or like, oh no, this is what I want. The folks that are in Gen X with me, the people that knew they wanted to be actors or musicians or dancers, they knew it. It wasn't a big question most of the time. There's a lot more questions now because we can't feel our feet on the ground. So we really have to land. You have to take the time. Don't buy into all this craziness if you can. Land in yourself. Find some help, get some guidance from whomever you trust. Land in yourself first. Then you give yourself the opportunity to hear your own body, your own voice. It will come to you. But I coach and treat a lot of late 20s, early 30s folks, and it is really tough. I mean, imagine that you're in kindergarten when World Trade falls. Imagine that by the time you're in middle school, there are school shootings. Imagine that you're in college or just within, breathing distance of college, 5-10 years, and it's COVID, and then all the AI and all the technology and social media and everything. These folks have been exposed to things, but themselves exposed more than we ever were. So I have such a huge amount of compassion for folks that are younger because they have entered into a foreign land in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm guessing that you and I wherever we grew up, there was autonomy. Go out and play. Go out and play, whether you were shy or not, or go to your room or whatever. We were urged to be in nature or be alone and read or play or whatever. I used to, listen to radio and cue up my tape to make mixes and things like that, which took hours upon hours. But I was doing it because I wanted to, and I was doing it myself. Nobody told me to. But now we are inundated with messaging. We are totally overstimulated. So young folks, if you can find guidance, whether it's meditation or some kind of retreat or people that you know that are doing that, aunts, uncles, people in your community, people even online that are offering you an opportunity to slow down, to hear your own voice and find out, discover who you really are, take that opportunity. Take it.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, it's really things you're mentioning. It's like, oh my God.
I know. We take it for granted.
We do.
I mean, I was in my late 20s before I even had a cell phone at all. And I was like, ugh, I don't want people to call me. You know what I mean? And now, think of it. Everybody has cameras, social media. I mean, there's such anxiety because, no one's taking pictures of me. But if I was young and cute, people could be recording you and you not know it. We have that capacity now. That's pretty daunting.
It is daunting. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
Last question.
Yes.
If you were to meet yourself right now, would you hang out with you?
How old am I when I meet me?
Oh, up to you. But that's also a good question.
Yeah, like you're different at every age, right?
Yeah.
You know, when I was at school in my 20s, I smoked. We all did. Smoking cigarettes. I wore white t-shirt, red lipstick, tight jeans, and construction boots. And I had really big hair. And I was like 1990. So like I probably would laugh at me now and just be like, wow, what are you trying to prove there, girly? Yeah, I mean, I do like myself, if that's kind of what's underneath the question. I like myself, and I know I'm also flawed. I know I get annoyed and impatient. I know there's a lot of things for me to work on, but I like myself because I'm willing to admit it. If we had a kerfuffle and or a schism or something, disagreement, and you were like, when you said this, I was just, oh, you really hurt my feelings. I would be like, I am so sorry. I mean, we need to learn how to apologize. And I love apologizing because it is humility, but it's not humiliating. If I can hear you, and it's not like, oh, I'm sorry you feel so bad, Hillary. You know what I mean? But it's like, wow, that was my effect. My part in your life in that moment was painful for you. So I'm deeply sorry about that. And here's maybe why that happened, but it's not an excuse. I value that. I value that in myself, and I value that in other people.
I think when I heard that question and I thought about it, there was a whole range of things that came up. And it was,
Would you want to hang out with you?
yes. And what came up for me is not that I'm perfect or that I don't get mean spirited or angry or say something that's naughty and
Not great.
not ethical.
Yeah. Yes. Not pretty.
Not pretty. I guess what I thought about is I'm interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm deep. I like to go into things. So if we're having,
Yeah.
I'm curious, but I'm also willing to be uncomfortable.
That's true. You are.
So if we're in a place that isn't smooth,
Mm-hmm. Let's dig in.
let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's go there.
Even if there are tears
And even if there's no answers, and even if we walk away, because I'm willing to come back again
yeah.
and go through it again over and over.
Me too.
And what that means, I'm willing to be there with you, whatever it looks like.
Even if we got to hash it out. Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
The people I want to hang out with, they don't always think like me.
No, true. Yeah.
And I have friendships that if we hadn't been in certain situations together, we would have never been friends.
Right. Yeah.
But they have turned out to be the most important people in my life.
Yeah.
Because they make me grow.
Mm-hmm.
They make me uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
They also support me.
Yeah.
They're there when everything else seems like it's falling apart. They'll show up.
That's really true. Those are the friends that, I most value too. It's like, maybe I don't see them day to day, but I know if something happened to me and I called them, and I said, hey, can you come? They would come.
And even if they don't come in that moment, they'll come back again.
Yeah.
And so it's appreciating what could be really tough.
Yeah.
And I think when I look at myself, and even why I'm doing this podcast, it's like, it's the tough moments that round us out like driftwood. To become
driftwood.
Back to driftwood, to become so beautiful.
Yeah.
When you see a piece of driftwood, you don't really understand the tree it broke off of.
Right. And you see the gnarls and the pieces and the pointiness and the gray patches.
Right. But the smooth,
Mhm.
often there's smooth parts.
Yes.
It's been polished by their currents and rings and water.
Yeah.
And even right. And even the kind of driftwood that we have here, the cholla, as it loses,
Yeah.
it's like a skeleton of what it is.
That's true.
and
the
it's
bones.
right, and it's
Those
beautiful.
beneath. Yeah, agreed.
So thank you.
Thank you. So fun.
This
I can't
was
wait to
fun.
hear your show. I can't wait to hear it. It's not out yet. As we do this, it's not out yet.
Not yet,
So
but it's getting close.
very excited.
And we're going to check back with you when you,
Okay. Oh, finish the book. Oh.
or maybe in the process.
Oh, yeah. Because I've never written a book before. I think what I'm going to do first is a proposal to try to get with a small press and then finish it. Because when you write a proposal, it can be up to 70 pages. So that's a lot that's going into the book, and then you build on that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As we wrap up this deeply engaging conversation with Lauren Lovett, I'm struck by how much her work embodies the essence of Driftwood Conversations. It's about embracing the moments that shape us, leaning into our challenges, and finding beauty and learning in the transformation process. Lauren's insights remind me of the importance of slowing down, listening to my body, and nurturing the connections that ground us. This podcast is my way of exploring those very ideas: connection, creativity, and deeper truths that guide us. Each episode brings stories that inspire and remind us of the strength and beauty in the shared humanity. If you enjoyed this episode and want to stay informed about future conversations, please subscribe to Driftwood Conversations. Share this journey with your friends, and let's build a community that values meaningful dialogue and connection. You can sign up for the updates at Driftwood Conversations on Substack. I'd also like to thank my editor, Jennifer Longworth, of Bourbon Barrel Podcasting, for her incredible support in bringing these conversations to life. Jennifer, your expertise and dedication make all this possible. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Driftwood Conversations. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and remember, there's beauty in the process.